Hey guys, it's Justine here from I Should Read That, and today I am just going to be showing off the 2020 books that I currently have on my TBR. And I have been super lucky, especially in the past couple of weeks, to have received a fair number of books that come out next year that I am going to hopefully, fingers crossed, be reading and reviewing for you guys before they come out. So some of these are physical copies. I have quite a few physical copies. Some of these are actually digital copies. So when that is the case, I will put the lovely cover up somewhere over here so you guys can go ahead and check it out. So I am going to be perfectly honest, I don't have all the dates for these books written down, and I'm feeling a little bit lazy at the moment. I don't really want to go stop recording, look them up, and come back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the dates down below on the screen. I know what month these come out in, but I don't know the exact date. Also, all of these are going to be UK publication dates because that's where I live. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with the books that I have on my TBR coming out in January. So the very first book that I have, I actually received way back in July, the end of July, because I got it at Yelp. I took a real stupid photo of myself, posted it on Twitter, and the publicist thought it was funny, so I ended up winning a copy of Throne of Swans by Catherine and Elizabeth Corr. This book comes out from Hotkey Books in the UK on the 9th of January 2020. This is a YA fantasy book, and very, very excitingly, it is actually a Swan Lake retelling. So, there are two things here. First of all, I love a retelling that's not super obvious. I always say Beauty and the Beast as like the obvious example, which I think it is the obvious example. It's something that's a little bit different, maybe something a little bit more unexpected. Also, fun fact, I happen to be obsessed with ballet. I love ballet. I have never been able to do ballet in my entire damn life, but I love ballet. Therefore, Swan Lake, super exciting. I've never actually seen Swan Lake, but I love the story. So this looks very, very exciting. So I've actually started reading this book. I am not very far, but I just kind of randomly picked it up one evening, and I read about 30 pages just before bed, which is kind of a minor miracle because I immediately fall asleep when I'm reading before bed. So this is going really, really well so far. Basically, it's about a girl, I can never remember her name. I believe it's Aderin. Her name is Aderin, and she is basically a princess. Very beginning of the book, her father has just died. Her mother died a long time ago, and she's basically orphaned, and she is now the protector of her kingdom. However, she has a deep, dark secret. In this particular world, nobles are able to transform into birds. It's one of the reasons why they are nobles, the reasons that they are the ones who rule. And her family turn into swans, and ever since she witnessed the death of her mother, she has been unable to transform. And if the secret gets out, she's no longer going to be the protector of her land, so she has to keep this a secret, but at the same time people are going to be expecting her to be able to transform. So we know that her uncle is the king, and she, at the point that I'm at in this book, she is on her way to her uncle's court. I suspect he is going to stir up some drama here for her. There's also going to be a romance with the kind of son of the steward of her kingdom. This is really fun so far. It's a really short book. I was actually really surprised. It's just over 300 pages, so I think that it's going to be one that I absolutely fly through. It might be one that I bring home for Christmas, I don't know, but I am very much looking forward to being able to sink into this book. The next January release that I have comes out on the 9th of January as well, and this is from Orbit Books, and I am basically doing this video today because I got this book in the post earlier today, and I'm so pumped. I'm so super excited. This is The Shadow Saint by Gareth Hanrahan. If you remember my videos from way back in the beginning of the year, you may remember that I flipped my shit over The Gutter Prayer. I loved that book, and it came out in January of this year. It was his debut novel. It's magnificent, it's super weird, and it's so good. So of course, I was super excited to get my hands on The Shadow Saint, which takes place a few months after the events of the first book, and it's already a very different book. I have started this as well. I've been reading it on NetGalley, so I have a digital copy of it, and I finally got my physical copy, so I feel like I can actually really dig into this because it's a long book and I struggle to read digital copies of long books. But anyway, enough rambling. I'm so excited for this book, can you tell? This book follows a couple of new characters, a spy who has entered Guerdon, the city, and we don't really know what his intentions are. Everything kind of comes together eventually, but we don't know what his intentions are at the beginning of the book. Then we have a kind of nobleman who is from far off land, who is coming into the city as well. His brother is the ambassador to Guerdon. And then we have my super sweet angel, Elidora, who is a character from the first book, who survives the events of the first book, and she has become the kind of aide to this major politician. Basically, there's gonna be an election. And if you like fantasy books that have proper good politics, like election campaigning and stuff like that, you will love this, because basically, as far as I can tell so far, this book is all about this election, this parliamentary election that is going to, without spoiling the first book, there are some implications from the first book that are going to very greatly affect the city going forward. It's so good so far. It's very different if you're expecting basically like a straight up sequel of the first book with lots of the same characters and continuing on their storyline and everything. That's not what we're getting here as far as I can tell, but it is so incredibly good. I am loving this so far. I'm gonna stop talking about it because this video will just be the Shadow Saint and nothing else. And from Harper Teen, I have a book that has been sitting on my shelf for a little while, and I am going to be reading it as soon as I can. This comes out on, I believe, the 21st of January. This is Spell Hacker by M.K. England. M.K. England wrote a book called The Disasters, which you may recognize. It has a purple cover and like a sort of colorful space helmet on it, and that looked super fun. I've got it just down there and I've not read it yet. Classic me. This is their new book, and this looks super fun. So it's basically about a world in which magic is basically an element and was freely available until this earthquake came along and released a magical plague, killing thousands and turning Maz, which is the magic, into a commodity that's tightly regulated and, of course, outrageously expensive. So we have a character named Diz and her three best friends who basically run a scheme siphoning off highly illegal Maz, and their next job is supposed to be the last heist ever, just like the best trope ever. And their plans literally blow up in their faces, and they're going to unravel a conspiracy. This sounds like prime Justine reading material. This sounds like so much fun. It's going to be so good, and I'm really looking forward to this one. So it doesn't look like a particularly long book. It's just over 400 pages, and I think that I'm going to try to cram this in either at the end of December or the beginning of January. It looks fantastic, and I cannot wait. The next book that I have is The Unlikely Escape of Uriah Heep, and this book is by H.G. Perry. This is another Orbit book, and it comes out in January. I'll put it on the screen somewhere down here. This looks super fun because this is definitely a book for book lovers, a book for literary lovers, and it really reminds me from the description of all of those episodes of Next Gen where the holodeck goes crazy and like Sherlock Holmes and Moriarty go running around the ship. This sounds super fun. So basically this book follows a character named Charlie Sutherland, and he has a magical ability that he has had to conceal because he cannot control it. He can bring characters from books into the real world. That would either be an amazing or terrible power to have. So his older brother, Rob, is a lawyer and has a super normal life, and he hopes that this really strange family secret will just kind of go away if Charlie does not use his power. However, literary characters start causing trouble in their city, making threats about destroying the world, and for once it isn't Charlie's doing. There's someone else out there who shares his powers, and it's up to Charlie and a reluctant Rob to stop them. This sounds so good. This sounds like it's going to be so much fun. A really good kind of fun wintry read for the days when it is just so cold and bleak outside. This sounds like the perfect kind of escape book. I can't wait to read this. It's going to be wonderful. Next we have Night Country by Melissa Albert. This comes out in early January from Macmillan Books. This is the sequel to The Hazelwood, which should be really interesting because I had very mixed feelings on The Hazelwood. The first half of the book is amazing, and then the second half of the book kind of falls apart for me. And I have a feeling that a lot of people sort of feel very similarly. So I am still really excited to read this second book because I love so much of what she set up in The Hazelwood. So I am not going to go into what is going on in this book because it's going to be spoilery, just judging from what I can see here, but I have a sneaking suspicion that this book has the potential to be really, really fun. If you like fantasy stories that blend fantasy elements with the real world, and if you enjoy fairy tales and retellings, I think that you probably would enjoy The Hazelwood. I would be super curious to hear your thoughts if you have read it, and I am very, very interested in reading The Night Country. So this next book is also a January book. It kind of snuck past me because it sort of straddles the line between January and February. The Kindle edition comes out in January, and the physical edition comes out on the 1st of February. So this is A Queen in Hiding by Sarah Kozloff. This comes out from Tor Books, and this is going to be really interesting because what they're doing is they are releasing, at least in the UK, I don't know about anywhere else, but they are releasing one book in the series per month. So we're going to have the first one in January, February, and then we're going to have the next one in presumably February, March, and so on. So this sounds really, really intriguing. I wonder if these are already out elsewhere, or maybe she's one of those really awesome people who can manage to write an entire series of books before publication. But regardless, this sounds like a really, really interesting fantasy series, and I'm very much looking forward to reading it. So we follow a character named Cerulia, who is the princess of Weirendale, and she is orphaned, exiled, and hunted. So she has to master the magic that is her birthright and become a ruthless guerrilla fighter and transform into the queen that she is destined to be. But to do it, she must win favor with the spirits who play with mortal affairs, assemble an unlikely group of rebels, and to wrest the throne from a corrupt aristocracy whose rot is spreading through her kingdom. This is another one. Perfect Justine book. It brings together so many elements of fantasy that I absolutely love. So I only just received a copy of this book, and I am like so pumped to read it. It looks so good. It's got a preview of the second book in the back of it as well. This is super awesome if you are interested in binge reading series. I'm not necessarily a binge reader, but I really love the fact that these books are going to be available really, really quickly. So it says here that readers will be able to indulge themselves without the wait. So if you're someone who really likes to binge series, if you are someone who really only likes to buy the first book when the rest of the books are out, I think that this is definitely something that should be on your radar. I am so pumped to read this. I think that's all for January, so now I'm going to move on to February. The first book that I have on the top of my little stack of February books is one I'm super, super excited about. I was only just sent a copy of this. It's very new and still very exciting for me. This is The Sisters Grimm by Mina van Praag. This comes out from Transworld Books in February. We'll put the date on the screen. This is one that, unfortunately for you guys, I think, I am going to try to go into knowing as little as possible. However, there is a little tiny blurb on the back that I will read to you. It says, "There are hundreds, possibly of thousands, of Sisters Grimm on Earth. You may well be one of them, though you might never know it. A tour de force of fairy tale and imagination, here is a magical tale of life, death, and sisterhood shot through with a spectacular, sometimes near hallucinogenic sense of fear, wonder, and hope." This sounds really, really great. Not only is it super pretty, I haven't like unwrapped it at all because I want to keep it pretty for as long as possible, but this sounds really good. I am so in the dark about this. I have no clue what I'm going to expect, but I think it's going to be fantastic. I really like the author on a personal level. She is an amazing bookstagrammer, so if you are on Instagram, I will link her profile down below. I actually had no idea that she was an author. I thought that she was just a really, really artistic person who took really lovely lovely photos. But it turns out that she is indeed an author. Check out her feed. It's really, really good. And she's also super friendly. So I'm very, very excited for this. This is one of my top priorities for January. Next book that I have is one I'm very, very intrigued by. This looks really, really good. This is Rangel Stone by Darren Charlton. This book comes out from Stripes Books here in the UK, and I believe it's out in early February as well. This is a YA horror book that has a queer romance at the heart of it, which is just like, sounds so good. So this takes place in a world that has zombies in it, and it takes place in the islands of Rangel Stone, which are a safe haven in a world filled with the restless dead. But as the lake freezes over, there's nothing to stop them from crossing the ice. So we follow a character named Peter, and he's never really felt at home anywhere in particular, and he is nothing like Cooper, who's the boy he's been watching from afar. However, he is ordered to join Cooper out on the mainland, and they find more about each other. So they are going to unearth a dark secret about Rangel Stone's past, one that forces the pair to question everything they've ever known. This sounds really, really, really good. I have been very curious about this book ever since Yelk, because they were talking about it at Yelk over the summer, and I tried to win a proof of it and I couldn't, so I'm really glad I have this copy now. I don't often go in for horror books because I'm super squeamish and I'm also just the biggest wimp in the world when it comes to scary stuff, but this sounds really, really, really good. So I would love to know if you guys have heard about this one, because I think of all the books that I've got on my list, this one is probably the one I've heard the least about from other people. On the 20th of February, coming from Tor Books, is one that I've talked about a lot already, so I will try to not go too deep into it. This is The Unspoken Name by A.K. Larkwood. This is a new fantasy book, and it's got like everything I could possibly want in it. It's got death cults, it's got assassins, it's got wizards. It sounds so, so good. And this is another one that I've started. I'm in the middle of like 20 books right now. I'm fine, don't ask questions. And I am really enjoying it. However, I feel like it's going to be a little bit of a slower read for me because this type is like tiny. It's so small. So this is taking a little bit longer than I had thought. I'm really glad that I started it early. So this book follows a young girl. She is 13 when the book opens, and on her 14th birthday she is going to be sacrificed as a bride to this terrifying nameless god, and she lives with this cult that worships this god, and she's kind of been prepared for this particular role all her life. She's super lonely because she's in this kind of like different class from the people that she's around. No one can really talk to her. Everyone knows she's gonna die when she turns 14, so she's kind of not worth making friends with, and she's just kind of lives this really lonely existence. And she gets sent off to be sacrificed, and she gets the chance to escape. And hell yes, she takes that chance to escape. And she ends up kind of becoming this apprentice to this wizard. She learns to become an assassin, and years go by, and the cult catches up with her, and she has to confront her past. This sounds so good. I'm really enjoying it so far. You know, a fantasy book is good when it not only has a 2-page list of people involved, but a 3-page pronunciation guide as well, which I'm really thankful for. That's not even me being sarcastic. Genuinely, I think it's awesome. So this is a book that I think a lot of you guys are excited for. I'm really pumped to finish it. I have a sneaking suspicion it is going to be fantastic, and February 20th cannot come quickly enough. The next February release that I have is The Mercies by Kieran Millwood Hargrave. She has actually written primarily children's books, of which I am a huge fan. And she recently wrote a YA kind of gothic Dracula retelling called The Deathless Girls, and this is her very first adult book, so she's definitely branching out. And while I haven't read her non-children books, I am super, super excited for this because I love her writing so much. So it says here, on Christmas Eve of 1617, the sea around this particular remote Norwegian island is racked by this terrible storm. So our main character, presumably, Maren, watches as 40 fishermen, including her father and brother, are lost to the waves, and all of the men of this particular island are wiped out. So now the women must fend for themselves. So 18 months later, a kind of sinister figure arrives. A man is summoned from Scotland to kind of bring this place to heal, and he feels he must root out evil at all costs because he believes that this island is untouched by God. So this is inspired by real events. This particular storm did actually take place, and also it is inspired by the 1621 witch trials. So it's a book that's all about how suspicion can twist a community. So I'm kind of unclear as to whether or not it is historical fiction or fantasy. I suspect that it's probably going to blend the two. It sounds really intriguing and I'm very, very interested. I think that this is the exact kind of thing that she does really, really well, but it is obviously a much more adult subject, so I'm really glad that she is kind of branching out into other age ranges because this book sounds so good. Now we're moving on to March, and I only have one March release on my TBR at the moment. This is Havenfall by Sarah Holland. That light is so distracting, sorry about that. This is by the author of Everless, which was a really big debut novel that came, I think it was a debut, it came out in 2017, and the sequel, which was the end of the duology, which is Evermore, came out in 2018. I've read Everless, I really enjoyed it. I've not actually finished up the duology, but this sounds really, really interesting. This is one of those books that's kind of like, it's portal fantasy. We have doorways to other worlds in our own world. So, it takes place in the Rocky Mountains, in a place called Haven. Most people think that Haven is just an ordinary small town high in the Rocky Mountains. Maddie Morrow knows differently. Her family is full of secrets. The inn at Havenfall is the biggest secret of all. Deep beneath the beautiful, sprawling manor are the doors between the ancient realms, including Bern, Fjordenkill, and Solaria. The door to Solaria was sealed long ago by ancient magic for protection for the other kingdoms. Once a year, delegates from each realm meet to keep the peace and celebrate the solstice, under the careful watch of the innkeeper, who is Maddie's uncle. This year is different. The door to Solaria has been opened, and Maddie's safe haven will never be the same again. This sounds so cool. It sounds really, really fun. This comes out from Bloomsbury Books in the beginning of March, I think the 6th of March, and I think that this is just going to be fantastic. Now we're moving on to April, and this book is one that I'm so incredibly excited to read, and I'm so grateful to have gotten my hands on a copy. This looks amazing. This is The Queen of Coin and Whispers, and this is by Helen Corcoran. This comes out from O'Brien Books in the UK and Ireland in early April. So this is YA fantasy, and it is also an FF romance. It does feature a lesbian romance, which I am currently apparently absolutely loving because a lot of the books that I'm reading do have lesbian romances in them. I'm so excited. So, it says here on the back, when an idealistic teenage Queen Leah inherits her corrupt uncle's bankrupt kingdom, she brings a new spy master into the fold, Xania, who takes the job to avenge her murdered father. As the two grow closer, they are quick to learn that all isn't fair in love and treason. They must decide not only what to sacrifice for duty, but for each other. This sounds really good. I'm super, super excited for this one. It just sounds like the kind of book that I think a lot of YA readers have been wanting for a really long time. Not only does it sound like it has an amazing romance in it, it also sounds like it features two very, very strong women at its core. So this sounds awesome. This also just came in the post, and I'm like so thrilled. I keep staring at it, wanting to start it now, but I should probably read some of my like January books instead of April books. Oh well. So the very last book that I have to show you from my 2020 TBR is Monsterous Hearts by Claire McKenna. This book comes out in early April as well from Harper Voyager here in the UK, and this sounds amazing. I'm super pumped to read this, partially because it says here that it is a sensational debut novel perfect for fans of Outlander and The Binding. Great. This is a gothic, epic, romantic fantasy at its very best. A tale of magic, intrigue, on dangerous waters, and a love story for the ages. Catnip, I swear. So when Arden Beacon is sent to the lighthouse, she is simply a woman with a job to do. She neither seeks nor expects distraction. After years tainted by disappointment, Arden is finally taking up her family's profession. She must prove herself worthy of her name, for she has nothing else. But the coast she has been tasked with lighting is far from the world she knows. The salt-swept backwater town of Virgil is battered by a sea teeming with colossal ancient beasts. It is a place of secrets and rumors and tight-lipped expectations of a woman's place. More than anyone, the folk of Virgil whisper about Arden's new neighbor, Jonah Riven, hunter of leviathans. He murdered his wife, they whisper, a perfect golden girl full of charm and potential, so very different from Arden Beacon. They say he is as much a monster as his prey, but Arden cannot get the stranger out of her head. This sounds so good. This sounds great. This sounds like another one where I think that it is an adult book, but it will probably have a lot of crossover appeal with YA audiences. It sounds so good. I'm really excited. I've had this on my digital TBR for literally months, months and months and months, and I've been waiting to read it because I want to keep it fresh in my mind for April, but the time is coming and I'm definitely going to pick this one up soon. So, those are the books that I have that are coming out in 2020 that are on my TBR now. So I would love to hear it in the comments below if you're interested in reading any of these books, if they're in your TBR as well, if you've not heard of them at all, or if you've already read some of them. I post bookish content to this channel fairly frequently, so go ahead and hit subscribe, check back soon, and I will see you next time.